Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer. I'm your host, Sarah Bueno. I'm a psychotherapist, teacher, consultant, and most importantly, a wounded healer, living and working in Skokie, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. This is a space for thought-provoking, unscripted conversations with people from all walks of life, united by the shared mission of healing ourselves while promoting healing in the world around us. Whether you're here to find inspiration, learn, or simply feel seen, you're invited on this journey of healing from the individual to the collective. Thanks for joining me. Hi. OMG, you are here. Welcome to the video version of Conversations with a Wounded Healer. So excited to have you. I find it super weird, like doing the videos. I specifically started a podcast with just my voice because I didn't want to see the videos, but here we are. This is just the new world we're living in and I have to suck it up. Okay, there's a couple things that I need to tell you about. Very excited. If you're watching this when it comes out in July, my dear friend, Michelle Winston, and I, who you will hear at the end of July, we did a training called Care in Chaos. And I wanted to share it with all of you. We are making it available for purchase for anybody who has felt challenged by what is happening in the world right now and wants a little respite. So it was a 4-hour training. The recording is 3.5 hours. You can get CEs. To find that, you can go to tinyurl.com/careinchaosrec. That's CAREINCHAOSREC, and we'll make sure to have it in the description below for you to purchase. Also, again, if you're watching this right now or anytime before September 6th, my BFF and I, Sarah Suzuki, are hosting an online version of our popular supervision training, Bridging Heart and Practice. And if you have been a supervisor, want to be a supervisor, or you are an Illinois social worker who needs to get those 6 supervision CEs, this is the training for you. It went so well when we did it back in April, and now we're doing an online version to make it accessible for other people, and we're super excited for that. So you can get that at tinyurl.com/thesarahs online soup. That's SUPE. So the Sarahs with an H, online soup, SUPE. So let me tell you about my friend Simon Mont. I met Simon and his business partner, Tamala, who you heard from in June, and I was super excited to talk with both of them individually because they're both amazing, incredible people. And this episode is one of those episodes where language doesn't really capture everything we're talking about. So if you like the vibe when we're kind of on another level out in outer space, this is your episode. So we talk about spirituality being left out of therapy. We talk about consciousness. We talk about the definition of God, and it blows my mind. I've listened to it a couple times now, and I still don't know what my definition of God is. So it's something that honestly, I think I'm going to continue to meditate on and keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper. So it might sound like a lot. And you know what? It might be for you. I don't know. I'm not the boss of you, but you'll have to just give a listen and see what I mean. But I hope you dig it. So let me introduce you to Simon. Simon Mont is a lifelong learner doing his best to remember and respect the sacredness of the world and help others do the same. When he's not helping to keep the movement moving by supporting organizations to bridge the gap between values, vision, and impact with Harmonize Consulting, you can find him writing poetry, making music, building furniture, or playing whatever sport someone invites him to. So please enjoy this conversation with my friend Simon Mont. Hello, Simon. Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer.
Hi, Sarah. It's good to be here. Thanks for chatting with me.
When I saw you on my calendar today, I was like, oh, okay. At least I have 1 hour where I can just be, and it'll be so lovely.
Yes, I'm glad. I'm looking forward to being real as well.
Honestly, I don't think I could do it any other way. So I'm glad you're on the adventure with me today.
Yeah.
So, do you want to tell folks a little bit about who you are and what you do before we dig in?
Yeah, what part of who I am and what I do should I
It's an
reveal here?
open question. So anywhere you take it is where it's supposed to go.
Well, currently I am looking at this rock that is grounding for me. I think
Yeah.
that reveals something about my relationship to the earth and kind of where I go to center. I'm looking at this this little six-pointed star that
Mm.
just comes out of the flower of life, which I think is like
Yes.
a great representation of both like the depth of my mystical Jewish practice and the fact that I'm also kind of like a cheesy acid tripper that gets fun little fractally things at Mount Shasta. I've got a quote from Charlie Parker behind me: if you don't live it, it won't come out of your horn, which is a complex thing for those who know Charlie's history. But I think that speaks to this idea of like really embodying something and then being able to express it. And as far as like my vocation in the world, I help people solve problems. So I'm really interested in this puzzle of organizational development. So when we get together as a group of people to make an impact on the world, how do we actually take collective action to build the world that our hearts know is possible? How do we work with all of the different layers of our personal histories and psychologies and traumas and bodies to pull that off? How do we form good relationships? How do we build strong organizations that can create the systems and ideologies and worlds that we know we deserve? Um, which is just a different way of phrasing the puzzle of like,
Mhm.
what are we doing here on
Mhm.
Earth? Like, what is going on here? And
What is going on?
how should we be here
Mhm.
as individuals? How should we be here, and how should we be here together as
Yeah.
groups?
What is your answer to those questions right now? Just I mean, you started off
Yeah,
saying that you were an acid tripper, so let's fucking go. I've been
yeah. I
watching
mean,
shit about quantum physics. I am ready.
I'm happy to go there. Maybe if we
You
ease
need
our way toward the
warm up.
center,
Okay.
we'll get something that's more like distilled.
All right.
Yeah, because like, what do you
Okay.
mean by right now? I guess maybe we can start there.
Well,
Like,
in
where are
in
we?
this in this moment, because I feel like if you asked me that question, I would answer it differently from different vantage points in my life with different experience, different people I'm surrounding myself with. And we're in such a unique, I hope, unique time right now that doesn't last forever. Uh, that I'm sure in 6 months, you'll answer the question differently too. So that's what I meant by right now, literally right now.
Yeah. I think right now I'm like mostly present to kind of competing contexts for understanding.
Mm,
So right now I'm looking out at this backyard, and it's beautiful and it's calm and it's peaceful and it's green and it's lush, and it's telling me that the earth is healthy and fine and that I live in a very safe and calm neighborhood. A month ago, ICE raided a house down the street and took away a neighbor that I didn't know personally. And that's kind of telling me, like, oh, there's something happening and it's hitting close
mhm.
to home. But as I sit here, like, there's a world in which everything's fine and I'm safe. There's also a world in which there's a political turmoil,
Yeah.
and I can really tune into both of those different contexts. And then even when I look at the political turmoil, it's like there's a world where I can see, everything, a context where everything's going bad and descending into fascism. There's another way I can see it as like this is a big tumultuous wave in spiritual global process that I don't understand. You know, there's all of these different things. And I think in this moment, like most of what I'm present to is like, wow, there's a lot of contexts. The context I center in really informs how I feel and what I do. And it would appear as if I have some level of awareness and choice of those contexts. So that's an interesting place that I'm in, kind of in this pause, actually. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, well, that's where I am right now.
And I love if we could break down what helps you do that? What helps you be in different contexts? Because I think over the last year, I've noticed my capacity to do that has increased, and like to really be able to consider a different context that I have like no lived experience for in a I don't know. I mentioned this on a recording before because it sounds really silly to be like, "Oh, I can really imagine like somebody else's life." And that seems very shallow and silly, but there's something deeper that I can imagine now that I couldn't imagine probably a year ago. And something changed within me, and I don't know that I've put my finger on what that is yet, and I think that's probably one of the ways we're going to get through this is for us to all be able to enhance our ability to jump into different contexts. Um,
Yeah, what can you talk about the example of like what that was like for you? Like what do you know about that shift, or can you bring me in deeper?
yeah. Well, I mentioned it on I last year you and Tamala and I had talked a little bit about spiral dynamics, and I had taken a course that combined spiral dynamics and the Enneagram from this teacher out of Egypt, Khalid El Sharbini, and I had him on the podcast last year. And there was something about being in a non-US centric space with mostly Egyptian people. I'm never in spaces like that, right? Like it's almost always US centered, and even the ones that aren't US centered are always white centric. And so there was something about learning from someone who has such different lived experience than I do and seeing through his eyes and then getting to learn from different people in the class what they were seeing from their eyes. And there was just something that opened up a space that it's like, how do I describe it? I'm sounds so silly, but what's coming to me right now is like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and like a floor kind of opening and like falling through the floor, but in a good way.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. That makes sense to me. What I'm hearing is kind of like at any point in time, we're all like making sense of all of the different things that are in our awareness.
Mhm.
And we're using all of the whatever tools and frames are at our disposal in that moment.
Mhm.
And it can be very easy to forget that our best understanding of the world in any moment is actually just produced by a set of tools. And that if you have a different tool set, it all changes. So everybody's sense of what is real and reality, and even themselves and their own place in it, is all a house of cards.
Right.
And then there's, I think, I heard you in the like the joy of the realization. It's kind of
Yeah.
once it falls apart a couple times, and you start to realize that each time it falls apart, the thing that grows back is like cooler.
Yeah.
And it's actually not that bad for it to
Yeah.
fall apart. Then it's not scary anymore. It's kind of sometimes like even me, even earlier today, and these past week, I felt the pressure of things, and I'm like, oh man, I'm really due for a complete collapse pretty soon.
Mhm.
And wow, I really just pray that I have the awareness to pause and let myself sit and feel it and not fight it off too much.
Mm. So do you think it's a series of collapses that has supported your capacity to be in these different contexts?
Yeah, I think we're talking about a couple things at the
Yeah.
same time because it's like let me put it. I think it's really important, those moments like the one you had where you realize everything that you have thought of as a limit or thought of as real drops out.
Mhm.
And that you realize, and it's like a more deep confrontation with what is actual reality because you
Mhm.
realize the lens that you have is not good. So I do think that like lived experiences of that happening
Mhm.
in an unavoidable way are really important because as we have more of them, we get a little bit better at inviting them and we get a little less attached to our own. So that
Mhm.
seems to feel right to me. That's what attracts with my experience.
Yeah. I wonder all of the time what gets in the way of people wanting this experience. Like I've like I said before, I've fallen down a YouTube rabbit hole of quantum physics and like simulation theory, and it makes me feel so much better. But I know that if I would have gone into that stuff probably even a decade ago, I would not have been able to handle it. It would have made me more anxious because I just didn't have the capacity yet. And let's see. I feel a sense of urgency in wanting, and this sounds so fucking cliche, so I'm sure you have better language to put it, but like to get people to fucking wake up, specifically therapists, right? It's an emergency. It feels like. And I sometimes feel alone when I take my profession as a whole. I feel alone. I feel isolated in the things that I believe in what I've prioritized for my own healing, for my work, and I don't think I'm that special. So, you know what I mean? Like I don't wanna feel alone because I want this to be what everyone wants.
And what is it that you
What is
want there?
it?
Yeah.
To know ourselves, to know ourselves so deeply that we can get ourselves out of the way and take care of one another and get some shit done for the greater good.
Yeah. Let's play. Let's play. Can we play with this a little bit?
Oh my god. I love that, like, I'm interviewing you, but all of a sudden this has turned into me, and I'm fine with it. As
Yeah,
long
I
as
mean, we can go back and forth. We can see how it
Yeah,
flows. But I think like
yeah.
because to me, I feel when you pointed to like the therapist community, then I started to feel a
Mhm,
little bit like grounded in it.
mhm.
Um, because let's just take like a therapy framework to play with here. Let's do like internal family systems. That's
Great,
probably
that's a good one, a lot
most
of people
people know
know.
that, and most
Yep.
people are listening. You know, internal family systems. So there was a moment in my life, probably your life, where you did not know internal family systems therapy,
Yep.
and you had a certain understanding of reality. And you're
Mhm.
chugging along and doing whatever. Then there's this moment where you learn internal family systems therapy. And there's something inside of you, just like there was something inside of me that looked at that and made this assessment. If I take that in, it will do something to my consciousness that will get me more of where I'm actually going. So you already knew before you had IFS, you already knew basically where you were trying to go. And you had a thing that could calibrate what it was going to get you there. You kind of have this beacon. And I think that one of the things that happens a lot, somebody has that and they're more or less aware of it, then they get internal family systems therapy. And now all of a sudden they have a new map of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And they're using this map of reality, but then it becomes their primary context.
Mm-hmm.
They start seeing everything through internal family systems therapy, which creates some
NARM,
possibility.
everyone knows. That's what I'm going to say. NARM, that's what did it to me. But yes, go on.
Yeah. Right. You see everything. And that's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful because it opens up some possibilities, but it also closes some possibilities. So then there was some moment in your life where you hit the limit of internal family systems therapy. Something happened for you where you were like, oh, I see this framework and what it's useful for and what it's not useful for. And now I can use it. I'm not going to identify myself as I am Sarah, internal family systems, and my consciousness is defined by this map. There's something deeper inside of me, and I can use this when it's useful and when it's not useful. But there was something that allowed you to do that thing. It's also that thing that allowed you to do that thing is probably also what catches you when you have these other breakdowns. When all the contexts shatter, there's something else that's like, oh, I know how to go toward my sense of the good.
Mm-hmm.
And even deeper, I know how to go toward my sense of the good. There's something even deeper in there and I know how to evaluate my own sense of the good for bullshit. You know, like for me, my direction toward the good used to be more tied up in my own ego and
Mm-hmm.
desire to prove myself than it is now.
Oh,
Still
yeah.
kind of.
Right.
But
Same.
like there's something in there that's like, oh, that's your own stuff. That's your own stuff. Like there's something
Mm-hmm.
that's so deep that it's actually able to evaluate whether or not internal family systems is even the thing. And I think personally, it's contact with that is the mechanism that allows us to like grow. Because that's the impulse, right? That is
Mm-hmm.
the same thing that figured out when we were tiny beings, what we needed to take in from mom and what we needed to not take in. And it's the one that understood how to program DNA into a body, right? There's a deeper life force. And when you know about that,
Yeah.
right, that you know about that, then we realize that all of the other things, they're either pointing us toward it or away from it
Yeah.
in any moment. And when we start feeling like something's pointing away from it and it becomes our identity, we are eager to have it be shattered. We seek it out because we're not afraid of the false self dying, because we're longing for deeper contact with that true ineffable thing. And I think that the people, like you're nodding, right? You're like, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. I would have said it different.
Yeah.
Like
That's why I'm
most,
like, yeah, putting my spin on it. Yeah.
right? You're going to put your spin on it. Somebody else is going to say what I said. And it's, we need to eliminate the false sense to be able to make room for the false self, to make room for the higher self. Somebody else is going to come in here and say we need to clean up our karma to reveal our soul. The Jewish mystic is going to come in here and say we need to shed the klipot so that we can find and elevate the sparks, right? Like everybody's going to have their thing. But the fact that I was able to just rattle off 5 of the same thing in 5 different vocabularies is like, that is the thing.
Yeah.
And I think that like one of the things that happens in therapeutic spaces that I've been in is that we are afraid about theology. We are afraid that what I just did was I just talked about the soul and I just talked about the nameless one that is the one with everything. And everybody knows it's there and we're all afraid to talk about it. But in therapy, we're often afraid to talk about God and theology. And we're also afraid to talk about broader systems and politics that we live in. And you combine those things. Well, now all of therapy is actually reduced very to a small
Yes.
spectrum of
Yes.
consciousness. It's
Yes.
all the human psyche, mostly the personality structure. And it
Right.
often becomes, how do you make the individual experience of the current world palatable by accepting the limitation on how much joy and true unity love experience we are available for? How do you make it palatable by being okay with that and being a productive worker? And that is boring.
Ah, fuck. You just said so much good stuff. Okay. Yes. I have had a sense for a while that fear of I don't know if fear of spirituality is the right thing. Avoidance of spirituality is probably more of what I would say in the profession is a barrier to the profession's evolution. Certainly. Absolutely. And a lot of these quantum physics videos I've been listening to, all these like scientists, boop, 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 like this guy who invented the CPU. I can't even remember what his name is, something Italian. And he was basically, I watched this thing where he's making a case for science needs to adopt spirituality. And I mean, this is where I go to spiral dynamics because I'm like, that makes so much sense, right? If we're like expanding consciousness to like encapsulate more things than just this one thing, that makes sense that we're going in that expansive direction.
This is my favorite. I love this area. Okay, I've got two directions we can go. We can
Okay,
kind of
okay.
go more of a political analysis, historical analysis direction, or we could go a little bit more of a like straight theology, spirituality direction. Which one do you feel like is?
Ooh, oh
We'll we'll,
man.
we'll get them both somehow. But where do you
Oh,
want to
okay,
start?
okay. Let's start with spirituality then, because that's more fun.
Okay. So what's that word mean?
Yeah, what does spirituality mean? For me, it is the easiest way to say it is a belief in something greater than myself. But what does that mean? I trust. What do I trust? I trust. I trust.
Okay.
Some might call that faith, right? And yeah, I'll just stop there. You go.
Okay. This could be fun. So first, spirituality. The moment we say the word spirituality, we're speaking in English. English has a history that invented the word spirituality to distinguish it from other things at a particular moment in time for a particular reason. That's how language evolves. It's not that spirituality is some true cosmic thing. At
Right.
the moment, I'm like, what is it? It's like,
Right.
wait.
Right.
So now what I want to do is I want to do my best Paul Tillich impression. Paul Tillich is this theologian, kind of Martin Luther King Jr. was reading Paul Tillich, amongst other folks.
Hmm.
Tillich he's got this book, Dynamics of Faith. And it's one of those books that
Hmm.
anybody that I've ever heard knows who read it, their life is often defined by before this book and after this book.
Okay, say it again because I'm putting it
Dynamics of Faith.
on my
And
Spotify immediately.
to me, this was a really big book, like a really big moment in my life. And I thank my mentor, Mushim, who's a Zen Buddhist, for pointing me toward it. But here's my best Paul Tillich impression for you. You are ultimately concerned with something. Everyone is. You, Sarah, me, Simon, every single person listening. Ultimately, you're concerned with something. There's an object of your ultimate concern. And the way that we know this is because anytime you're making a decision, you're evaluating it against something, right? If you're like, should I use internal family systems or not? You're evaluating it based on what you're ultimately concerned with. So somebody says, I'm ultimately concerned with, people healing their child parts. Well, they're going to use internal family systems all the time. If somebody says, I'm ultimately concerned with, planting a garden, they're only going to use internal family systems to the extent that they can plant the garden. Everyone is ultimately concerned with something. It is the thing, it's the barometer by which you make your decisions. One way to think of it is like the tuning fork for you. We're not all honest about the fact we are ultimately concerned with something, and we're all not totally aware of the thing we're ultimately concerned with.
Ooh, will you say that again? Because that is, yes.
We're not all aware of the thing we are ultimately concerned with.
Mm-hmm.
So if you asked me what I was ultimately concerned with when I was 15,
Mm-hmm.
I would have given you a spiel about justice.
Mm.
But if you were to look at my actions,
Mm.
you would have seen that it was actually a lot of like self-protection that I was
Mm-hmm.
concerned with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, at that moment in my life, I was concerned with self-protection. That was the object of my ultimate concern
Mm-hmm.
at that moment in life. But I was able to transcend that, right? At some point, I realized, I don't want to ultimately be concerned with that because that's interfering with the deeper object of being ultimately concerned with something. But everybody's got this thing. What are you ultimately concerned with?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you're ultimately concerned with is definitionally your God.
Mm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
what it means.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
what the word God is,
Yeah.
right? God
Yeah.
comes from the German, that which you invoke, right? It's what you're invoking in every moment. So if I'm ultimately concerned with, let's say, being a great therapist,
Mm-hmm.
well, then my idea of great therapist is my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
My life is directed toward praying toward that God. I will
Yeah.
sacrifice things to the altar of that God.
Yeah.
If my life is ultimately concerned with feeling belonging in the radical left,
Mm.
well, I know where my doctrine is and I know what my God
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it is. So then we are all faced with an inescapable puzzle, which is, what is your God and how aware of that are you?
Mm. Oh.
Right. And now this is
Yeah.
right. And once you're inside of that frame, you realize there's no
Mm-hmm.
escaping the theological conversation. You have a God,
Yeah.
and there's no escaping then what comes, my wisdom tradition, right, that I'm most grounded in the Jewish wisdom tradition, comes and says, great. And is it an idol? An idol
Yeah.
is not a trinket. That's not what an
Right.
idol is. An idol is it something that is some subcomponent of the great whole? That if you think that the subcomponent is the ultimate end, you'll ultimately wreak havoc and
Yeah.
damage.
Yeah.
Right? Money, is that your idol? Your ego, is that your idol?
Right.
We can go edgier, right? Like healing, is that your idol?
Mm. Mm.
Your
Ooh.
idea of a good person, is that your idol? Your
Mm.
idea of what it means to be like a good leftist,
Yeah.
is that your idol?
Yeah.
And once we kind of have this idea, right, these two ideas combined are incredible power. You have a God, is it an idol?
Mm.
And those two things then can become like an incredible engine of constantly deepening everything to become more aware of, more aligned with what I want to be, what I'm ultimately concerned with, which is
Mm.
something that like I can try to wax poetic about, but the
Mm.
best way for me to communicate it is just to tell you that like, it, I know it, we are it. It is here with us.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I'm going to be able to say that's going to encapsulate it. That's basically as good as we can get.
Yeah. 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 I mean, now I need to do a deep dive and what is my idol? Yeah. TBD. We'll report back. But can you like have you answered those questions for yourself right now that you could give an example of what that looks like?
Yeah. So what I'm really doing on earth right now, what I'm actually doing in this exact moment, is there's a particular place where I sense a particular type of experience inside of my body. It's like there's something that's going on in my belly. There's something that's going on in my heart. There's like a deep calmness inside of whatever turbulence is in my nervous system. I'm able to make contact, like direct contact with things outside of me. Like I can feel the trees and I can feel this rock I'm holding. And then I've gained the ability to identify some of these markers inside myself through discrete experiences that I can talk about, kind of like more mystical healing prayer experiences, right? I'm trying to tune into that, and then I'm just trying to say words that to me start to cultivate more of that experience in my body and more sense of that in the field. And I'm trying to pay attention to when my words are arising from that place and pointing back, and when they're coming from other places
Yeah.
in my psyche. And that's
Yeah.
all I'm doing. So right. And because that's the somatic marker that I have that's as close to what I'm ultimately concerned with, which to me, what I would say is like, I'm ultimately, if I needed to verbalize it, I'm ultimately concerned with surrender to and service of and embodiment of an ineffable life force, which is that which creates the possibility for justice and the possibility for love and the possibility for joy. I'm ultimately concerned with that. And I'm trying my best to
Yeah.
calibrate, and I'm trying my best to remember that when I say those words aren't what I'm ultimately concerned with. Those were my
Right.
best attempt in the moment
Right.
to
Yeah.
be in line with this other thing, which I'm not going to be able to name, and I'm not going to be able to know, and I'm not going to be able to
Right.
own.
Right. Right.
So there you go. There's my religion for you.
Yeah. And can we live here all
Yeah.
the time?
Uh,
I mean, that is a real question, right? Because like over the time that I've done this podcast for the last 7 years, there are guests, conversations, moments where this space arrives, right? This feeling, the somatic experience arrives, and it feels really good. And I know that when I turn off this conversation, I'm going to have to go look at my email and poof, it goes away.
okay. Now I have to give you my best Abraham Joshua Heschel impression. So this is Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. This is basically his philosophy of Judaism and philosophy of religion, but Judaism in particular. So basically, we all have these things, and let's just call them peak experiences.
Yeah.
Experiences where we feel like a well of deeper meaning and awe and purpose and fulfillment that gives us a sense of like all is perfect, or this is why I'm here. This is where we're going, right? We've all have
Mhm.
that thing.
Yep.
And there's different types of that. We can investigate those. Those are interesting. But we're pointing to a similar one right now. So now we have this puzzle, which is we're not gonna occupy that consciousness all the time. We're not going to have a peak experience all the time. That's why it's called a peak experience. Right? So then you have the puzzle of what is it that you do to move toward it?
Mm-hmm.
And then what is that you do to do it after it to
Mm-hmm.
align yourself with it? And the
Mm-hmm.
first
Mm-hmm.
one is religious practice, and the second one is religious ethics.
Mm.
Right? Do you meditate? Do you pray? Do you like what do you do
Mm.
to get there?
Mm.
And then how do you touch it and remind yourself? And then how do you let that funnel down? And that we're all kind of actually always creating religions all the time.
Hmm.
Right, because somebody who their peak experience is, watching the Eagles win the Super Bowl, they have a series of practices that they are doing on a regular
Mm-hmm.
basis to use that to achieve a peak experience. And then they are thinking that they should do things based on it. We're all doing these kinds of things. So then we can really think about how we want to design them, and how we want to embody them, and how do we want to evolve them. And I think another thing that's really interesting that's happening right now in the United States is that we're not studying the history of this puzzle,
Yeah.
right? A new age space of meditation, you're not studying it, right? If I study the history of Judaism because that's my thing, right? Boy, you can't spend more than about 20 minutes reading anything about the history of Judaism without realizing how many times the Jews have got this wrong. Right? We've got it wrong over and over and over and over again. But we're studying the history of this constant question, which then ideally is helping us learn how to
Mm.
get it right and evolve it over time. Whereas if you pop out of a history and you're just like, poof, I took acid and now I feel like I'm enlightened.
Yeah.
Well, you're probably going to make some really basic beginner mistakes, and they're probably going to be just inheriting cultural patterns from the very thing you're trying to transcend. And it's probably going to
Right.
be stuff that if you read a book written 2000 years ago would be like, that was the first mistake we made.
Yeah.
So like we're kind of this like sense of being disconnected from history.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because disconnected from history is right next door to living in the present moment. All there is the now.
Mm.
No, there
Mm.
is the history in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, yeah. Okay.
Well,
I'll stop before I
I
go
was
too
just
far.
gonna throw in there to bring it back to therapy. That's what you just articulated, I think one of the concerns that I have for bringing psychedelics into the therapy space, because I mean, I personally have found experience of healing in that way. And what we're talking about is not the training that people are getting to provide this. And not that this is the only way, but I know that sitting in a class and then having a couple of experiences taking ketamine yourself are not going to prepare you for what we're talking about.
Yeah, because it's also right. What do you do? Like, what is the purpose and thing that's fundamentally guiding you when
Right.
you're in that kind of space, right? So like
Right.
I was trained to serve kambo, which is a plant medicine. Comes from an Amazonian tree frog. It's a purgative. It's not
Mm.
in particularly like psychological. It's often like very physical, very
Mm.
emotional. And I can tell you, like, there is a range of ability to be in deep service to that medicine, right?
Mm.
To tune into it and understand that there's a medicine greater than me,
Mhm.
and I am here in an attempt to help that person connect with that medicine that's greater than me. And there's a range of ability to then understand what that medicine is actually trying to the not how I understand healing, how
Right.
the medicine
Right, right.
understands healing as
Yeah.
part of a system. Right, the medicine was here before internal family systems and child parts were here. Right,
Right.
it's doing something else. and I can be in touch with, there's a huge range right there. And I'm the shallowest of the tiniest of the little
Right.
tadpoles of the range, right?
Right.
But I think that one of the things that happens in like a ketamine experience or an MDMA experience, or even like I think psilocybin is actually even more to the point, is like there's people who can, there's taking psilocybin to get into a more flexible psychological space and then doing human work given the
Mm-hmm.
flexibility. And then there is understanding that there is a spirit
Yeah. Yeah.
that is here doing something,
Yeah.
and that actually the center of the whole cosmic story isn't the human. It's not the human healing
Right.
journey. This isn't
Right.
this we're not the main character of some of the most important stories.
Right.
And that shift,
Mm-hmm.
we're definitely not training on that. And
Mm-mm.
so then what ends up happening is you can very easily have really big problems
Yeah.
where ultimately what the person doesn't, they don't realize what they're doing, but ultimately they're trying to like leash and train and control the spirit of psilocybin to do their
Yes.
tiny little bidding, because
Yes.
their idea of what they think healing should be is more
Yeah.
important to them than their surrender into this all.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's very interesting because
Mm-hmm.
you can easily write off what I just said as spiritual woo woo nonsense. And like, I, it's where the conversation actually needs to happen. The
Yeah.
conversation actually needs to happen at a broader sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, actually, all of our conversations are very limited inside of small frameworks.
Right.
And all Simon's doing is widening the
Mm-hmm.
aperture a tiny, tiny
Mm-hmm.
bit. And somebody
Mm-hmm.
else needs to come along and widen and widen and widen
Mm-hmm.
until we see, and then we can decide what context we need to be in a moment to actually be of
Right.
service to this thing. And that's the game, I think, is fun.
Well, because you're also, I mean, this is part of the problem of many therapies, right? Like you talked about in the beginning, that we're sort of conditioning people to be productive workers, right? And this idea, like, I can make it very concrete. Like, this is something I bump up against in my own therapy all the time. I've been on a journey of healing from sexual abuse, and I have a particular idea of what it's supposed to look like when I am healed, right? When I am done. Yeah, right. Um and I keep getting pissed that I'm not there. And I want the therapy to get me there, right? I want the ketamine to get me there. And yeah, that's not it.
Yeah, because it's right. It's very interesting because I can be in this world where it's like basically I am having an experience. I would like that experience to be different because
Mhm.
I would like a different experience of being alive. So I would like to heal the issue inside of me so that
Mhm.
I can have a different experience of the world. Wow, I just said the word I a lot of times. Very interesting, interesting,
Right.
interesting frame. Right?
Right.
There's a very different frame. Life is occurring in a deep,
Mhm.
magical, and interconnected way. There's an experience of love and connection and service and a will to constantly blossom into new life and discover and learn and grow that seems to be vast and all encompassing.
Mhm.
I can participate in that ongoing process. And when I find a way to plug deeply into that process and be of service to it, things rearrange inside of me
Yeah.
to offer me a whole new set of blessings.
Yeah.
And some of that is what I would consider healing myself.
Right.
And some of what I need to do to align with life is to get my own stuff out of the way so I can let the thing
Right.
happen. But in this context, it's kind of like, look, like we're sitting here, we're having a fun conversation. I'll tell you, I could make a little choice here. I could just start weeping at how stressed I am.
Same.
I, you know, there's like a deep devastation.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel like also the like little one within me that's just doesn't want to be responsible for anything.
Yeah.
Like so
Mm-hmm.
like my guess is no matter how much I get to have the blessing of like saying fun things with people that are fun on podcasts, like will always have the choice to experience all of these wounded aspects, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know, look at Mama Earth. She got scars. Like
Yep.
I'm not so sure that it means that I need to heal in the sense that I am sick and I need to heal.
Right.
It seems like a little bit more to me like I forget and I need to remember. It seems a little bit more like that to me. Um, and when I realize I forget and I need to remember, and I realize that forgetting and remembering is a cycle. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
I go close to the nourishment, I go far from the nourishment. I go close
Mm-hmm.
to dissolving, I come back, right? I go close to the peak, I come back. Like that just seems to be about as natural for me as a human, as a planet orbiting the sun. I doubt Pluto's tripping out about how broken they are.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just a different, and that's like we're talking, that kind of comes back to the context. Like we're talking about a large shift in the context
Yeah.
of the story, right? This cosmic story I'm talking about now, humans aren't, I'm a participant in a
Yeah.
story. And then how do I be a good sidekick is a very different question than how do I make
Mm-hmm.
myself the star?
Yeah. Well, we almost have to wrap up.
Oh,
And if I
bummer.
don't, I know. Let's just live here forever. But I really am very curious. Your answer to the question I always ask guests is, are you a healer?
What does that mean?
It's up for you to define.
um I don't know what it means. Am I a healer?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I know that I'm doing my best to be a reminder.
Mm.
I know that I am doing my best to point to possibilities and choices. And that the choice that I'm the most concerned with and the possibility that I'm the most concerned with is our ability to connect and live a life in deep relationship to that which creates the possibility for love and justice and nourishment and participating in the cycle of nourishment in life. I know that's what I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
do. And if I knew what the word healing meant, I would maybe say that, but I don't really know at this moment.
Yeah. And you don't have to.
Yeah.
It's not a requirement.
We didn't do our political rant though.
I know. I know. Should we do that again next time?
I'm ready whenever. It's
Right?
always fun to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, where can people find you?
Nowhere I'm hiding. Uh,
That's how I feel right now. Don't email me. Don't at me. I don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah, we got a website for the like organizational development work, which is about, creating functional organizations and strategies and political analysis and all that good stuff. And that's harmonize.work. And by the time this comes out, I will have my little artist website and all these things. So you should be able
Ooh.
to find my name, Simon Mont. And I'll probably have an Instagram that I'll share
Cool.
at some point, but I don't know it yet.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure to drop that in the show notes for folks.
Yeah.
I love this conversation, and there's no way to end it, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
So to be continued.
Yeah. And may we like find a way to continue living it and having it. And I'll say like, can I give you a little nugget? One of my favorite
Oh,
nuggets.
please.
Okay. So there's this concept of like, savior, like the Neo archetype, right? And we will talk about it as Messiah, come to save us. Messiah comes from a Hebrew word, Mashiach. The word siach is conversation.
Hmm.
The prefix mem is from. So looking at the structure of this Hebrew word, that which comes to save us is something that comes from a particular quality of conversation with each other.
Mm.
And when we're in that quality of conversation with each other, that is how we are summoning a different thing into existence. And that was in some ways our experiment today, was how can we find the conversation together, and can we have the conversation together? Because we know exactly what it is when we find it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you, and I can't wait to have you back.
Yes, I look forward to chatting more.
Thanks to our guest for an amazing episode. To find out more about our guests, you can visit www.headheartbiztherapy.com/podcast. You can find me at Head Heart Biz Therapy on both Facebook and Instagram. Thanks to the Jules Creative Marketing team for video editing, to Liam O'Donnell for our album art, and to Ben Mueller for our theme music. And I'm your host, Sarah Buino. Until next time, bye-bye.